Sorry. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Now it's visible.
All right. Okay. All right. So today we will talk about security in AWS, right? And I'm going to refer to the standard process how we implement security at large enterprises, right? AWS well-architected framework has some security guidelines, which is adopted and accepted industry-wide, right? So I'll refer the same best principles, and I have added my own kind of points based on my experience with years on AWS, and can try and simplify it for people who are new to cloud or kind of are new to the enterprise environment implementation of cloud, right? But before I begin, I just want to say that we will be covering security as a horizontal, right? So this requires participants to have basic understanding of all the foundational services of AWS, like identity and access management, VPC, S3, CloudFront, and similar kind of. So we're not going to cover this. We're going to cover how to ensure security when you're using these services on AWS. All right. Now, before I begin, I just want to start kind of this session with one question. What do you think about security in cloud? Is it a risk or is it an advantage? And please feel free to answer your post your answers in the chat window. I'll have a look at them, and we can spend few minutes on this because it's not just about technology, but it's about the thought process, the way you approach and see security overall. So take few seconds, think about it, and what is your opinion on this, based on the companies that you work at, the customers that you implement at AWS, on any general community feedback, right? So is security a risk or an advantage in cloud? Where do I see that? Okay. So most of you feel it is an advantage. Javier? Yeah, if I had asked this question 3 years ago, or actually when I used to ask this question 3 years ago, the answer was clearly one-sided. It is a risk. In fact, customer used to ask this question upfront, that what about security of my data, my applications, my workloads that I deploy in AWS, right? That was the first concern that people used to raise, enterprises used to raise, right? So good, I guess we have moved a long way from having security as a risk, 50-50, and now to an advantage, right? And then I have a very good analogy for this, right? So if you come across anyone who has doubt about security in cloud and considers, you can probably use the same analogy. So, technical example, it's an analogy, right? So where do we keep our all valuables today? So we have gold, we have some important documents, agreements, right? So where do you think you keep all these things today? You want to secure them, right? All your valuables, so where do you keep them?
In a vault,
Okay.
on a drive, maybe Google Drive or maybe OneDrive.
Okay. Let me repeat my question. So again, not technical, right?
Okay.
Whatever your jewelry, gold, the important agreements, your kind of, let's say your apartment, land, house agreements. So where do you keep all these
Bank
valuables?
lockers.
Bank lockers, right? Everyone, most of them, yeah. Now think about the same scenario 25 years ago, or the previous generations, right? And grandparents, um, where do you think they used to keep all these valuables? Because they did have gold, they did have this important kind of documents. Where do you think they used to keep all these?
A secret hole in under our house. Maybe they used to dug it.
Absolutely right. So
Yeah, yeah, this
exactly. So this is the same analogy, right? The fight is between having data at your own data center or having workloads, application infrastructure in your own data center that is in your physical custody, basically, because you physically manage the data center. So currently, all the enterprises are in that phase, right, where they have this perception that as long as data and applications stays within their custody, right, within their own data center, they consider it as secure, right? But the moment they have to migrate application and data to cloud, which is essentially a multi-tenant environment, and you don't get access to that, you don't get physical access to a data center. You can access your data and application over the private network. You don't get physical access to data centers, right? And that's exactly the same analogy I can kind of we can think about is 25 years ago we used to keep all the valuables at home and we used to consider that it is the safest place, right? But today we are scared of keeping even kind of few grams of gold at home, right? Because we think that bank is the safest or the locker is the safest place to keep all the valuables, right? It is a multi-tenant system, right? So there are multiple customers who are owning lockers at there, right? You get a controlled access. You can't just kind of enter and get access anytime you want, right? Only the authorized person will get access, right? And still you consider it is the safest place. It is safer than your physical custody, right? So we are in the, I mean, definitely there are multiple reasons around that, right? First is that bank has evolved their offering and it is under compliance and regulatory governance, right? And that's why you keep it, you consider it as safe, right? And also, you know that to implement the same level of security at your home, it will take a lot of money and a lot of other things to kind of have the same level of security implemented at your home, right? So we are at the same level if we consider applications, data, and workloads in the data center, right? These giants, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they have ability to invest heavily into security, and they have been already doing it for the last couple of decades, right? So they can invest much deeper and much broader into managing security on their data centers versus you doing it on your own data center, right? And we are in the evolution phase, I would say. And now we already consider cloud as more secure than any on-prem data center in general. Okay? All right. So good. With that, let me begin this session. And you can keep posting your questions. We will have a Q&A at the end, right? Around 10-15 minutes. But let's begin the. I was shared my screen. All right, so I'll start with security as a shared responsibility in cloud, and then we will go with the step-by-step approach of how do you secure your AWS account, your networks and infrastructure, your data, endpoint security, and the detective control, right? So preventive and detective. Now, again, I have taken all this content from AWS websites and other places, right? So you might find these slides similar, but the overall content is very simplified for you to understand. And that's the objective is that prepared this time, right? So when you are in cloud, security is a shared responsibility. And when we say it is a shared responsibility, AWS is responsible for security of the cloud. And the customers are responsible for security of their application and then their data that they deploy in the cloud. Right? So when we say AWS is responsible for security of the cloud, it is essentially the physical data center, security of the physical data center, the underlying physical networks, the underlying hardware, and all the way up to hypervisor layer, virtualization. Right? And then data that you deploy on top of that is something you will have to manage and secure security based on the domain that you basically cater to, right? So for an example of database, you will need a completely different level of security compared to an OTT platform like Netflix, Hotstar, or Voot, right? So essentially, AWS will take care of the security of the cloud, and then it provides all the tools and techniques for you to implement security in the cloud based on your needs, governance, regulation, compliances, and regulatory compliances. Okay. So now let me explain what are the things that AWS does in order to ensure security of the cloud. Right. So point is that their physical data centers are at nondescript location. So you will never see a billboard or any kind of, saying that this is an AWS data center or this is an AWS office. In fact, so much so, these data center locations are not even known to their key customers and not even to their employees who doesn't need to work on that data, inside the physical data center. Right? It is actually a confidential information, right? So AWS has a region in India in Mumbai, right? But you practically do not have anywhere, you do not have the address of the actual physical data centers or the availability zones. It's exact address of those availability zones. In fact, they have a very strict mechanism, even for their employees, in order to safeguard customers' data, right? So they have this rule that will never get to know that which service is deployed in a particular hardware. Yeah. And the people who are into support and they know that Star as a customer, Ola as a customer, they use XYZ services, right? So they will never get to know that which physical servers are hosting their data or the services, right? So my point is that with this rule, AWS ensures that for any employee to categorically target a particular customer's data or to data set, right? So no one gets access to the AWS data center, not even customers, not even the employees, except for the people who work in the data center, right? Only the government regulators, right? Government bodies and regulators, they get access to the data center in order for them to certify these data centers. way, so since you don't get access to the data center, then how do you ensure that what AWS says is true and they're actually doing it or implementing the way they say they've done it, right? Easy, right? Because a specific domain, let's say if you're managing your own data center and you are into a banking domain, you will have to get your data center or your application certified by the regulators. Okay? So, for example, if you're dealing with any payment related services, you will have in US you will have to have your application certified with PCI and ESS. Okay? If you are dealing with any healthcare related application, you will have to get your application data certified with HIPAA. To federal government contract, you will have to have your data center certified by FedRAMP, right? And similarly, so on and so forth. So in Singapore, it is a Monetary Authority of Singapore, MOS, right? So there are some regulations by that authority. Your data center application certified by the same, right? So every country, every region has their own kind of regulations and rules and standards, compliances that they periodically evaluate and make sure that the companies who are operating under their domain are, level of security that is needed for their customers. So the good part is that AWS data centers, and that is true for all the developers, sorry, all the cloud providers, are already certified with the same agencies that otherwise you will have your data center certificate. So once you see that it is a PCI or DSS or HIPAA certified, that means you can trust the data center and the agency that AWS is maintaining a level of security that they come in. Yeah. So what you can do is you can leverage AWS services and build the next level of compliance on top of the existing framework, right? AWS Artifact is a service which contains all the right. So all their audit reports. Yes, this is the right one. So any compliance certificate that you want to download to present as part of your customer use case, you can find it in AWS Artifact. It's a service that you will find in AWS Console. So you can go there, you can look for a certification or an accreditation, and you can download it to support your overall compliance. Okay? It contains the service, the data center, and all of the things that are covered as part of that audit. So this is what AWS does for you. But what as a customer, our focus of this session will be what as a customer you need to do in order to protect your data. To simplify this entire kind of complex and broad topic into 5 bullet points. One is, the number one, secure your account with IAM. Second, secure your infrastructure and network using VPC. Ensure that you have your data. And then what are the detective controls that you can implement? Okay. So session we will touch base upon all these services that will let you achieve security for each and every topic or each and every aspect that I've just explained, right? So you can have account security covered or implemented and code using IAM. You can have your network secured using VPC or all the features of VPC. For data security, every service that deals with data, there are some features that we will see. In order to implement detective controls, you have certain services like CloudTrail, Config, GuardDuty to continuously evaluate and analyze your infrastructure and notify you whenever there is a suspicious activity on your account. So let's start with account security. The best practices, because like I said, you should already have the foundational knowledge about this service, right? In order to keep your account secured, you should ensure that these best practices are followed. So never use your root account. Instead, use an IAM user with administrative privileges, because it is a lot more difficult to recover a root account if it gets compromised versus recovering an IAM user. Never enable programmatic access for your root user. There is no good reason to have access keys and secret keys of the root user configured for any tool, any programmatic access. Manage policies at group level. So don't apply and manage policy at an individual IAM user, because that has a slightly bigger or manual error at an individual user level, and some users can get elevated privileges accidentally, right? Instead of manage it at group level, so it is much more easier to control, configure, as well as if there is any anomalies, you will get it detected very easily. And replace, as much as possible, replace all the programmatic access keys with IAM role, as long as you are within AWS Cloud, right? So IAM role is much more secure because it does not require any hard-coded keys, right? And let me tell you that this is every major customer that I've worked with in past 7 years has experienced this particular security incident, that some of their keys were somehow got uploaded to a public repository, and then hackers got access to it. They spin up or they launched a lot of infrastructure for Bitcoin, the other things, right? Thousands of dollars of bills every single day, right? So the number goes from somewhere around $5,000 to $22,000 of spend within a couple of days, right? Around 24 hours. Okay. So please ensure that you safeguard your access keys, and in fact you rotate it if you have to use it in any environment. Well, if you're in an enterprise environment, you don't need to create an IAM user for every person that you want to grant console access. Instead, you can use your corporate identity and have identity federation, right? So I'm not sure if your organization, if this is implemented on the customer that you're working at or not, but it is like, what is identity federation? So you use your office identity or your corporate identity as a method of authentication for logging to AWS. And so let's say if you have a company email ID and Active Directory, right, as a corporate identity, you actually use the same credential even to log into AWS, rather than creating a new username and password under IAM. Just to give you an analogy, in case if you have never experienced identity federation in corporate environment, it is like using Google to log in or to sign up for Myntra or sign up for any other website that supports Google ID, right? So you're not creating a new username and password for every single website. You're just using your Google ID federated access into that portal. So you don't have to manage multiple passwords. So the benefit for identity federation for enterprises is that if you leave the organization, they just have to remove person from the corporate identity and the AWS access to all. Explicitly deny all the critical resources on AWS for non-administrative use. So let me show you some of these points. Let me explain you infographic, right? For you to understand what is the impact of this. So why do I say that go for an IAM user instead of root user, even for your day-to-day use? Because the root user has unrestricted access. So if that gets compromised, the person can do everything and anything on your account. You have control to provide very limited access. So you can have the granular control, access control implemented on your app, right? Second part is that if your root user gets compromised, it will be much more difficult to reclaim your account in case if the password is changed and now you can no longer log into your account, right? But in case of an IAM user, you can always, in worst case scenario, you can always log in the root account and take control of your account, disable those compromised IAM users and take control of your account, right? Also, identity federation, the concept that I just talked about, right? Identity federation only works with IAM user. It doesn't work with root user. It doesn't get applied to the root user. IAM user is what you should always prefer. Keep your root user credentials safe and secure, and only use it where it is absolutely needed. Okay? Don't use it in your day-to-day operations. Now, the other part that I said is that you should explicitly deny all the critical resources for non-administrative users. So why did I say that? That even if you accidentally apply any policy that broadens the scope of access privileges, if you deny your critical resources, AWS will ensure that adheres precedence. Okay? So this is how AWS policy authorization works, right? So let's say if you want to create you will never get an ATC or change anything at a network level. Okay? But in case accidentally you get VPC full access on your account, okay? Now if you try and create a VPC, if the explicit deny is not there, so if when you try and create a VPC, first kind of so your request will land on the AWS authorization framework. It will pull all the policy documents that are attached to your AWS identity, and then it will evaluate whether you're authorized to perform this operation or not, right? So let's say you're initiating a VPC, create VPC operation. So it will go and check in your policies whether do you have any explicit deny on the VPC, create VPC API call. And then it will go for the next search, lookup. Is this operation explicitly allowed, right? So is there any allow policy for VPC? And then finally, if it doesn't find anything, then it will deny by default, right? So what I was saying is that if you have an explicit deny, the operation will be denied forever, even if you have an explicit allow. Okay? So imagine a scenario where accidentally you get a VPC full access, but if at all there is an explicit deny on your policy document, deny will get higher precedence, right? So AWS will first check if there is a deny, and if it finds a deny on your policy, on the policy that is attached to your identity, then it will deny creating that VPC. Okay. Even if there is an allow statement, because it will not even go for that allow check. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much what you can have a basic IAM security check on your environment, right? Let's go for the network security. So every packet that reaches your instance will go through these.
The account property account तारामा आवश्यक तो कितने ट्रांसफर तारामा कैसे ना सॉरी guarantee check मारे ना आपको.
So every packet that reaches your EC2 instance, your application will have to go through various layers of security check on it, right? these layers of security check is your opportunity to implement a tight control on AWS, right? So a packet from outside internet, right? So a packet from outside your network or maybe internet will only be able to reach your network if it is open at the routing rules level or route table. So only if you allow route at the route table layer to enter that traffic, kind of get to the VPC and then try and reach to your reach. Okay? So you can have you have this ability to control what traffic can enter your network by controlling the route table. Now once it enters your network, before it reaches your EC2 instance, you will have ability to set up network access control list at the subnet level. Okay? Only if it is allowed at a subnet level, then it will go to the EC2 instance, and before the traffic is sent to the operating system, AWS has this security group at the host level, host in the sense the physical server level. So it will evaluate if the traffic is allowed, the port and protocol is allowed, then only it will let the traffic go to the EC2 instance. Okay? So there are three layers of security check on AWS itself: route table, network access control list, and security group, and then finally you have the OS security or OS firewall to enhance security at the operating system level, right? So please make sure that the traffic, inbound traffic and outbound traffic, right? So you have the ability to control your traffic at all these three layers. Okay? As long as you make sure that you have the right rules set up at these three layers, your network security, will be taken care of. So when I said route table, this is how you will see your route table, right? So you can define what traffic, what IP range, right, is allowed to enter or communicate to your network, right? So you can actually take care of the routing policies at route table level, and we know that you should have most of your infrastructure deployed in private subnets. So by default, everything should get deployed in private subnets, and only the internet facing workloads or infrastructure should go to the public subnet. Now I talked about, so these are the network level firewalls, right? So any traffic that enters your subnet will first get evaluated by network access control list, right? And only if it is allowed, then it will enter the subnet, right? But even before it reaches your EC2 instance, it will get further evaluated by security group, right? So for example, if you're deploying let's say if you're deploying a database server, you will only allow database port. Let's say if it is a MySQL, you will allow 3306, right? So you don't need to open HTTP or HTTPS or any other port on that server, right? And that kind of security can implement at a security group level as well as at an NACL level. Okay. Another interesting feature that I see is not implemented very widely, but it is really very powerful.
Okay.
So security group chaining. Right?
3 plus 4 is equal to
How do you ensure
48.
that, let's say if you have a three-tier application, how do you ensure that the web server should not directly communicate with the database server? Because they're part of the same network. By default, the network access is enabled within all the workloads
1 plus 2 is
deployed
equal
in the
to
same
21.
VPC.
2 plus
So how do you
3 is equal
ensure
to 36.
that you get
3
direct
plus
access
4 is
to
equal to
database?
48. Okay.
So, and similar controls,
Okay.
right? So if you want to have that kind of
4 plus 5
implementation,
equal
what you can do is rather than specifying an IP range in your security group, you can refer to another security group as the source of the traffic. Okay. So if you look at the security group, we have set up web tier with a security group named web security group. Okay. So for load balancer, security group with web tier, right? So here at web tier security group, I'm setting the source as a load balancer of web tier. That means the traffic will, web tier will only receive traffic from the load balancer of that web tier. It will not receive traffic from any other IP or any other server. Right? Similarly, the load balancer or app tier is set up with web tier security group. So what does that mean? Is that it will receive traffic, it will accept traffic only from the servers deployed with the web tier security group. Actually, if you look at the data center, database, the database is configured with the rule that will only receive traffic from the app tier security group. That means the servers which are set up with. Okay. Alright. Now the benefit of this kind of security group chaining, even if you kill environment where you will have new servers added and dynamic IPs are kind of assigned to those new servers, you don't have to manage anything or change anything at the security level. Yeah, because this kind of referencing to another security group will automatically resolve these dynamic IPs, right? And you ensure that above layer, only the designated layer of servers can talk to your workload, right? Even if other servers are deployed in the same VPC, they won't be able to your database or any other component here in this detail, right? So a very powerful feature. VPC has this VPC flow log because this is the best way for you to, and most importantly, the rejected traffic, right? So you can evaluate all these logs and identify that who is trying to hit your network and what traffic is being rejected from what IP these kind of malicious kind of requests are being raised, and then you can maybe do something about that, right? VPC flow log is, it delivers the network logs for all your VPC, right? So you can enable these logs at an entire VPC level or at a single subnet level or at a particular ENI. All right. We will talk about data protection as the next topic. And guys, keep your questions ready. We will address all your questions at the end of this session.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. So this is probably the most, I would say, critical topic in security. How do you protect your data? But let me tell you very honestly that there are two simple principles that will let you implement the complete data protection. Principles is, so the philosophy here is that when you can't always ensure that your data will never be stolen or kind of wired taken. But there is that if you encrypt your data, even if your data gets stolen, people will not be able to figure out the actual information that is there in your data. Okay. So the simple solution to data protection is encryption. Okay. Yeah. Of course, you have to prevent your data theft. But even more important is to make sure that you have the best level of encryption implemented for all your data communication and storage. So security of data in transit, that means encrypt your data over the wire.
Question,
and security for data at rest, that means encrypt the data when you're storing it in the physical server.
तो आप मैंने पूछा कि गेम पेड ना हाई करो उनके इतना वो तो मैं बारी में
All right. So what and how do you achieve this, right? So that data encryption over the wire or in transit, having the encrypted protocol, right? So we say HTTPS. S is a secure HTTP, right? And how is it secure? Because it encrypts data from server to your browser, right? So when you say HTTPS, it basically encrypts data both the ways.
No, bây giờ đi bay được.
And the encryption is
rồi.
done using an SSL handshake, so secure socket layer, right? SSL handshake.
This pyramid of
To implement that SSL handshake or SSL termination, you need to have an SSL certificate configured with your domain, right? So if I say google.com, there is an SSL certificate at the that server which is serving google.com. Right? Now, if you're deployed on AWS, if you're deploying your application on AWS, and if you want to achieve the same level of security, if you want to implement SSL termination, load balancer simplifies the entire process where you can enable HTTPS listener and have your SSL certificate configured at the ALB, so it will take care of the encryption decryption using the SSL certificate, right? It simplifies the entire process. The same thing is possible even for CloudFront and API gateway services like CloudFront and API gateway. So they support custom domain and SSL termination. SSL certificate, you have to apply the SSL certificate with your domain. Now talking about data encryption at rest, so all the AWS services that interacts with your data has this optional feature where it can encrypt data at rest. The reason why the feature is optional because data encryption is a resource and intensive operation, and a lot of customers they don't need it. For example, Netflix enable encryption. I mean, for them, performance is more critical than the security. Or there's nothing critical to secure in a video file, right? It is about performance, right? They care about performance more, right? So that few milliseconds of latency will be more kind of impactful for them if they enable encryption. That's why encryption is kept as optional. So you need to make sure that you have to enable encryption for all the critical data on AWS, right? And when you enable internally uses KMS to encrypt all your data in the physical storage.
160.
Okay. So what it does is that it basically generates a symmetric key, and then it encrypts your data and keeps the encrypted data in the storage.
20, 17, 60.
So this newly generated key is actually a data encryption key, right? But the point is that how does AWS safeguard this key, right? Because for every, if I talk about S3, for every file that you upload, AWS will have a separate key generated to encrypt that file. Okay, every single file gets encrypted by a separate. So now the point is that how does AWS keep track of all these mapping of which file got encrypted with which key, right? Well, the technique is very simple. AWS encrypts that key with a master key, KMS. Master keys are stored, generated and managed by KMS, key management. Right? Encrypt that key with the master key and then store the encrypted key along with your data. Okay. So now the process is very simplified. Whenever you need to access that data, AWS will first get the encrypted key, make an API call to the KMS, get the key decrypted, and then it will actually decrypt the actual data and then send it back to you. Okay. So this is the encryption technique that AWS internally uses. In case if you have to implement security for your data at application level, you want to encrypt some data at application level within your application, right? Then you can use a similar technique. Ask for data keys from KMS and make these API calls to encrypt and decrypt your data key from KMS. Okay. Similarly for EBS, when you enable encryption on EBS, AWS will generate a separate data key for every volume, right? And the data will only get decrypted at the operating system. Right? I'm just skipping this slide in the interest of time. Okay. Now I want to cover the endpoint security. So guys, we talked about identity and access management for your account security, VPC for your network security, So
मुझे खबर पड़ी है
encryption for data at rest and in transit,
English
yeah, to protect your data. And now let's just have a look at the endpoint security. So, or I would say, yeah, endpoint security. So if you are like Netflix or Hotstar,
was twice as
how do you protect your content, right? In a way that people should not be able to see the URLs of your video file host that is hosted on cloud, and should not kind of build another website with link to your video file, right? So there is a simple method if you are on AWS is that CloudFront supports origin access identity.
Question
So
samajh.
if you enable origin access identity on CloudFront,
Zoe
and if you use signed URL, then you can
was 6 years old.
URLs for your video file every
was
time
twice her
users
age. तो लुलु के
the video.
डिस्टेंस करो.
And you can explore this further. I'm just giving you this
तो
food
Zoe
for thought,
10
right?
years नीचे.
So you can explore this further, but this is a very powerful technique to safeguard your. So when I say dynamic URL, these URLs are valid only for few seconds or few minutes or few hours. You can define the
तू कितना
expiry of these URLs, right?
तो
So
भाई
that is really very powerful to safeguard your private content.
4
so
But there is even more,
Six
I would say,
तो भाई 10 years में होगा तो कितना years होगा?
threat when you are deploying your applications publicly.
Label 6 is passing
16. So 16.
So distributed denial of service, right? DDoS attack. So in this attack, what is the hacker is trying to do or attacker is trying to do is it is trying to bombard your application with so many illegitimate requests to choke your infrastructure in such a way that even your legitimate users won't be able to use your service. Okay, so it is a brute force attack, right? It will try and overload your servers or your application infrastructure with so many illegitimate requests, okay, and bring down your entire application, so it will not be usable for your legitimate use, right? So that is the DDoS attack in nutshell, right? But why it is more difficult to prevent? Because they do it distributed denial of service. That means they do it from multiple servers across the internet, across the globe, right? Really restrict these kind of requests at an IP level because multiple IPs, right? So you really can't figure out whether it is a legitimate IP. It cannot be done at an IP level. So how do you solve this? Well, there is a special purpose kind of software, or I would say component we call it as web application firewall. So you will have to scan each and every request, and then you will have to identify the malicious requests and drop those requests at the web application firewall level, right? Now there is a simple rule. I'll tell you. I mean, AWS has this feature, and you can implement. There is a simple rule that if you get more than 100 requests per minute or within 5 minutes from a single IP, highly likely they are programmatically generated, and it is not generated by a human interface. Okay? So you can have a rate limiting rule saying that if I get more than 100 requests in 5 minutes from a single IP, then block that IP for XYZ duration. Okay? And then there are other rules. If certain headers start missing, then you can block the request, or request does not have the right information, that you can block the IP. So WAF is a dynamic, a dynamic firewall that will learn the pattern, and then it will block the traffic from your illegitimate traffic. Okay. can do is you can front your AWS services like load balancer, CloudFront, API gateway, because AWS already has this default DDoS protection at the edge for all their managed services. And most importantly, you should learn the leverage elastic nature of cloud, right? So you should have your environment auto scale. What the attacker is trying to do is it is trying to choke your infrastructure with so many requests, right? So if you have auto scale implemented, if you have your infrastructure application auto scale, then you will get that breathing time for your WAF rules by the pattern and start blocking your illegitimate traffic, right? Yeah. So if you are on a fixed infrastructure, it is very easy to kind of peak out your infrastructure utilization and bring down your application. But if you are on auto scale environment, as the load increases, you will be able to add more resources, and it will take some time for the attackers to actually kind of hit the limits and then bring down the infrastructure, right? So that time is good enough for WAF to kick in its intelligence and drop the packets at the illegitimate traffic, identify the illegitimate traffic and drop the packets. Also, don't minimize your surface by deploying or by not deploying unwanted. So by deploying everything by default in private subnet except for the infrastructure that really needs to be internet facing, and then safeguard whatever you expose to the internet, right? Like I said, WAF is integrated into a lot of AWS services to leverage WAF. And finally, one last slide on the detective controls. So no matter how good security that you implement, right, to prevent any incident, but you still need to have detective controls. Yeah. To ensure or to actually observe what are the activities that are happening on your account or on your resources infrastructure. So what are these some of the basic rules is that enable CloudTrail on day one, right, to see all the AWS related activities on your account. Then we have this AWS config that will keep an inventory of all your resources at minimum, right? But then the most important part is the config rules, which will continuously evaluate all your infrastructure against certain configurations, right? For example, if you have a rule that SSH or RDP should not be open for 0/0, that means SSH and RDP should not be open for public IP. If you have that kind of a policy, you can very well program it as a config rule, and config will identify if accidentally or deliberately any port is open or any security group is open with these ports, right, for internet, right? And that way you can identify that. Even you can take some automated action to remove those security group or rules. You can implement CloudWatch alarms to identify certain key events, right, like root user login or activity by root user, extremely high infrastructure utilization on servers or databases, right? Log analytics. So like I said, VPC flow logs, your CloudTrail, and other application logs. So if you implement log analytics, you will be able to identify malicious activities on your account. And AWS offers a managed service called as Guard Duty that automatically gives you intelligence of by analyzing of your any malicious activity or any kind of suspicious activity, I would say, on your account by analyzing CloudTrail and VPC flow logs, right? So Guard Duty is a good built-in service, a very comprehensive approach, but a good service to begin with, right? AWS Inspector to scan your workloads and identify any OS vulnerabilities that are on, right? Okay, so with that, we are at the end of this session. Ultimately, what are the key elements or design principles to approach security is first of all, you have to enable traceability. You have to go for the principle of least privileges. That means only allow what is necessary and required and keep reducing it, yeah, as you see that the privileges are not required anymore, right? Also focus on security of your systems that you deploy on cloud, right? Bridge AWS and front them with AWS as much as possible, AWS managed services as much as possible. And again, we are in the age of automation, right? So when you identify, so security, what is the reason of automating security incident and mitigation? So it's like, if you identify something while it is being compromised, you have a much better chance of protection or minimizing the damage, right? If you don't automate it, you will get to know after a day or two or a week that something has happened, right? So it's like the credit card, for an example, if the banks have this automation implemented for any credit card misuse, they can inform you much faster and kind of, mitigate any kind of, impact, a major financial impact if they automate it, right? But if they don't automate it, then you will get to know after a few days, right? After the actual damage is already done, right? And it is of no use. Okay? So that's where automation is very, very, very critical. In fact, real-time analytics, security automation or security is one of the main use cases for real-time data analytics, right? Because you get to know the events or security events right there when they're happening, right? And you can control them or mitigate the risk much better if you have a real-time analytics. So with that, I'm done with my session on security today. Let me, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, first we can pick up the photo for the session. Can we? After that, we will start the QA. Okay?
Yeah.
So can we open our camera for?
I'm on.
I'm on.
Hi guys.
Hey guys.
Thank you so much, Bhavesh Shah. It was a great session.
Thank you.
Rahul bhai, photo photo. Rahul bhai. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm taking a pic. I guess everybody, like whoever is, yeah, okay. And thank you, Bhavesh sir. It's a great session. And also, we are explaining about.
Rahul bhai. So we also shared we also sharing the feedback form. If anyone changing the job, please fill the form. Rahul bhai, now you can.
Yeah. So basically, I have taken all the questions and I'll be posting that in the chat. So before that, I just want to ask Bhavesh about the AWS Shield. I think that is a new service and it is related to DDoS attack. So is it different from the WAF that you have discussed, or is it something new? It is relevant to the current topic which we were talking. So I wanted to ask this question.
Yeah. So AWS WAF is DIY, do it yourself, right? So you configure the security web application firewall yourself, right? AWS Shield is a managed WAF prevention by AWS, right? And well, it is very good, yeah, but it is expensive. Expensive in a sense there is a pricing 1 year commitment, $3,000 per month price, right? So compared to other similar offerings like Akamai and other players, right, this is very much cost effective. But yeah, it is a managed DDoS prevention by AWS. So AWS Shield Advanced AWS Shield, there are two parts, right? AWS Shield Basic, which is automatically applied to all your infrastructure. But if you want to go for DDoS prevention, managed DDoS prevention by AWS, then you have to go for AWS Shield Advanced, which is a $3,000 monthly cost, yearly subscription fee. So minimum 1 year commitment is it.
Okay. So I have posted the questions, and you can like take the questions according to the priority that you want to give them. So there are 5 questions basically.
Okay, why should we not enable programmatic access keys for the root user? Okay. So again, first of all, you need to understand what is programmatic access key. So programmatic access keys are these keys that you configure. So first of all, these keys, if anyone gets access to these keys, they have access to your entire AWS environment. Okay. So my point is that this is the user with full access. There is no way to limit the privilege of a root user. And on top of that, if you have keys on programmatic access keys for root user, if they get stolen, then you can see what kind of damage that can be done. Okay. So I hope that is clear, right? Never enable programmatic access keys for the root user. Yeah. Believe me, you should not have programmatic access key in the first place unless it is absolutely needed, because I have seen large enterprises who has all the companies who are working in security domain, they got their keys compromised. Okay. So that is the reason, right? You should avoid having security keys in the first place and never do it for the root user, because otherwise the damage will be very deep on your AWS. Okay, the next one, if I have an auto-scaling group that creates 10 more private instances when needed, and sometimes if you need to access it, what is the best practice? Is it VPC endpoint is the only option for 1 second? So you want to access these instances, and when you say access, do you want the operating system level access, or you want to remotely connect to these servers, or you want the API in a sense, you want to access the application that is deployed on it. I'm referring to second question, so whoever asked that question. So let me consider that you want to remote access, right? So if you want to have remote access to any privately deployed instance, you should go. Okay, there are two parts, right? If you're doing it from your office network, and if you're a large enterprise, there'll already be a VPN connectivity from your office to the VPC, right? And you should be on your office network, and then only you should access it, right? If it isn't right. But if you're not on your office network, and let's say small medium setup, they don't have a VPN is not very expensive. You can do it. But let's say, the other option is that you can have a bastion host, a jump server deployed in public subnet, and you restrict that jump server with certain IP. That you will be connecting to. Right? So you first land on the jump server, and then kind of hop onto your private IP. And you can have the security chain there, right? So all the private instances will allow SSH or RDP only from the jump server, right? So you don't allow any other IP from the jump server. If it is an enterprise environment or if it is in your user capacity. I'm really not very much sure about how the Kubernetes embrace policies work, so I won't be able to answer that. At which level WAF should be placed in the network security for Lambda function? So Lambda, when you're talking about Lambda function, you are exposing Lambda function via API, gateway, or a load balancer, or cloud, right? So all these three layers they support WAF. At least I can confirm for KLB and cloud.
I
So
can
you
like
can implement WAF. WAF is your first point of contact. Whenever you are publishing any website or any API for that matter, right? WAF will be the first entry point. And then everything else will come. So that's where you can place it. Do we have any security feature available for? Okay. I guess this is a incomplete question.
Yeah, I think I'll ask that question. Okay, yeah, that's
Okay.
the complete question. Thank you.
Second point is available now. Second point.
Yeah, it is not available. So he was asking it for I think serverless functions apart from WF and OWASP.
CDE is equals
I don't have a
to
complete
EF,
understanding of OWASP,
then
right? OWASP,
EFH is equals
but I've seen something at AWS level or some service in AWS level that is there, right? So maybe just do some more research. For WAF, I can say, see, serverless WAF is integrated in these two services, and load balancer, application load balancer, and CloudFront, right? So normally, if you are deploying your application at EC2 instance level, application load balancer is the best
किधर यार भाई ऐसा भाई भाई ये कर रहा है जीत कर रहा है भाई मोबाइल में
service to expose your application, right? And that's where you can have the WAF rules set up. If you are serving static data or APIs, it doesn't matter, right? So CloudFront, again you have this WAF. Okay, there is one. I'll take this last question. The security scope for security professionals. Well, it is a myth that security is responsibility of a particular department or a particular kind of focus group, right? In fact, security has to be implemented at every layer, right? So don't, unless you want to become a security expert, right? Security is always important for everything that you do in AWS, at every layer, right? Yeah. At infrastructure layer, at the PaaS, AWS PaaS layer, at the data layer, at your application layer, inside your application code layer, right? So even if you are a developer, you need to know what level of security that you need to implement inside your application, be it a front end, back end, or data, right? So similarly, in AWS also, security is an inherent expectation, right? And if from part, I understand from part is that you are in your initial phase of career and you will be looking for kind of lot of new opportunity. I mean, looking for new opportunities, right? So, when you are being evaluated for AWS, security is one of the core things, right? That whether you understand the basic security or not. So before you even try to become an expert, at least try and understand the foundational security in cloud, because that's where I see the maximum gaps are. And I'm talking about companies worth of $10 billion revenue. They're spending millions of dollars of having millions of dollars of spend on AWS, and yet the foundational stuffs are not taken care properly, right? So if you try and do the foundational stuff well to begin with, that's the first kind of ask from the employers and the companies that those are looking for AWS skilled people, right? And then if you really want to consider security as your primary skill, then it is a long way ahead, long journey for you to kind of learn and understand a lot of other things, and not just AWS security. All right. So with that, I think we can To wrap up this session, that's all from my end. I just want to give one advice, uh, and this is having 7 years into cloud, having seen a lot of customers, having trained almost 3 to 4 thousand people across best organizations in India and outside India. So in 2014, if you just had basic knowledge, you were a desirable candidate to hire in AWS, right? But
કેમ શું થયું
over a period of time, in somewhere 2016 and 17,
ક્યાં જવું છે
AWS certification became the most
ક્યાં જવું છે
important kind of criteria for hiring
હા
people. But now we
ક્યાં
see
ક્યાં
that
જવું
there
છે
are trainings and there are courses that will
ક્યાં
get you
જવું છે મને કહેતો
certified
ખરી
very easily, even
ટી
without
શર્ટ પહેરી
giving
લઉં ક્યાં જવું
knowledge,
છે
right?
જે
So the
નોજી સાફ કરે
certification
બાથરૂમની
has
સાફ
lost
કરે
its value. And knowledge is
હા
key,
બસ બસ
right? But in last couple of years, even knowledge is commoditized, right? So you can learn everything from anywhere. Everything is publicly available. There are good trainings. But what is key is experience. So
બસ
my point is that
બસ રોહન બસ
yes, certification and knowledge is good to have, but experience is what counts
રોવાનું બંધ
the most when
રોવાનું બંધ
people
કરો
look for hiring
હા પહેરી
candidates.
લઉં પહેરી લઉં
Okay.
ચાચુનું કામ પતે ને
So
એટલે ચાચું
if you get a chance to work on a good project, give that a priority against high salary or anything else. That would be my first and best advice. In your early stage of any career, basically any technology, not just AWS but any
તું એને હેરાન ના
technology.
કરીશ
Gain good
વેદા.
experience.
અમારે ખબર છે પણ તું છે ને
All right,
એવું ના
guys.
કરાય
With that,
એવું ના કરાય વેદાંત હમણાં જ આવ્યો ને
part anything else?
હમણાં જ આવ્યો ને વેદાંત
So some thank you to some people. So someone is helping me to create this session. So thanks to Manish, Rahul, Paras, Dhaval, and Hardik Pancha. Thank you guys to support me, and we will
Bas,
definitely
bas.
creating a
Bas.
next to new session. And Bhavesh sir, thank you for giving me such a time.
Thank you very much, Bhavesh sir, for the session.
બસ બસ
Hey, my pleasure, guys. I'm always,
બસ
ready to help. I would say young talent, right? I see myself. I recall myself,
લેતો લેતો
10 years ago how it was, right? And I see that there is a
Vivan.
need for counseling. There is a need for help
Anu
in
paint up.
this early stage of career, because people end up in bad jobs, bad companies, and it really impacts them a lot, right? So anytime, Parth, do connect me over the LinkedIn. If you so at Intuitive Cloud, we just hire very highly experienced people, right? So I'm not sure if those jobs are relevant or not, but just look up the jobs at Intuitive Cloud, right? And otherwise also I'm connected with a lot of companies, right? So in case if you are looking for anything, do reach out to me. I'll see what best I can do.
Yes, sure, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Please share your LinkedIn profile.
And
Yes, Manish.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you,
All
sir.
right, take care. All the best.
enjoy joining
Thank you so much, Bhavesh sir.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Manish, where is Manish? Paras, Rahul bhai.
મનીષ એવું હોય તો બીજામાં આવી જાય બીજી લોકેશન લઈ લઈએ એક પેરી હોય તો
Rahul and Manish, will you be sharing the PPT in the WhatsApp group?
Yeah, we will try to definitely I will share with you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Guys,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, my name is Shashank, and I would like to have the PPT.
Yeah, I will share it with you. I will try.
but in which group will you be able to share?
This is I will share with you our DevOpsWays group. Give me 1 minute. I'm sharing you.
Also, Sasank, we have a YouTube channel, so also we will be there. We will be put some links inside the YouTube channel, so you can check them.
Oh, okay, fine. No problems.
Or Facebook group or yeah.
Also, you for upcoming share in beginning there.
So yeah, Shashank, I'm sharing you the link of WhatsApp group.